Live from the AOC studios, deep in the heart of downtown Lafayette, Louisiana. It's fun. It's excitement. It's the Saints turning the ball over again as we're going on the air. It's the election cycle finally over. We can breathe a sigh of relief finally. No more talking about elections until, I guess, March or April, because now we're going to have a special election for state treasurer and possibly other positions. But here in Acadiana, thankfully, there's only one race that we'll have to focus on. And again, that's the state treasurer's race. We'll get to that in a second. It's the Clay Higgins juggernaut going to Washington. Let me not say that. We'll hold that thought before it escapes. On that and a bag of chips tonight, here on 124 East Main. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A most cordial welcome to 124 East Main. We are live. It is December the 11th, 2016. I'm Ian Ozan. Happy that you are here with us tonight on the show. As we mentioned, oh, excuse me. I'm not sure what. That's a rogue crouton or what? We had a salad earlier today. And something got caught in our throat there. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but hopefully it won't come back to haunt us too terribly much. This is our penultimate show of the year, as Mark Allen Pope on the Talkmeisters used to like to say. Our penultimate show for 2016, our second to last. Next week I won't be here. Santa Claus will be in this time slot. So for those of you with kids or with grandkids or nieces and nephews, if you have young ones in your life who want to send a message to Santa Claus or want to talk to Santa directly about what they want for Christmas, next Sunday night, 6 o'clock right here, 124 East Main, for the second year in a row, becomes Santa Claus Live. Santa will be here live via satellite from the North Pole. Right now it looks like it's going to be a little bit too warm for him to bring the reindeer down to Lafayette, but on the off chance that he can make it, he'll be here in studio. If not, he'll be live via satellite. Either way, we here at AOC teaming up with his elves to connect the phone line direct to the North Pole and to have all the little kiddies call in and tell Santa what they want for Christmas, and Santa can check to see if they're on the naughty or on the nice list. The phone number, for those of you who do want to prepare for next week, is right here at the bottom of your screen. 366-8951, extension 2. That's in the fashionable 337 area code. Have your little kids dial that number next week, and they can talk to Santa Claus and tell him what they want for Christmas, what their Christmas wishes are. Again, folks, Santa Claus does not do ponies. He wants me to remind you of that. Santa does not do ponies. So if you have a pony on your wish list, you're going to have to talk to your parents about that one, kids. But again, Santa does not do ponies, so please keep that in mind for next week. But 366-8951, extension 2, 337 area code. Next week, if you have any little kids who want to talk to Santa Claus, again, next Sunday night from 6 until 7, if it extends any longer than that, we will publicize it here on AOC during the week. But again, 6 to 7, definitely next Sunday night, Santa Claus Live will be our year-ender for 124 East Main, because of course the Sunday following will be Christmas Day, and the Sunday following that will be New Year's Day. We will be back here, or will be back here, I should say, and I guess that makes it 4 weeks on January the 8th. We'll be back here in studio with 124 East Main. We'll kick off the new year, and we'll take things from there. At that point, we'll have been on the air 8.5 years on AOC. Time flies when you're having fun. But I digress. Next Sunday night, our season finale, or I should say our year-ender, Santa Claus Live, will be here. And I'm going to work on something special locally here. Try to resurrect a local Christmas tradition. And get one of my old friends from the television world here in Lafayette to resurrect one of his old Christmas traditions. I'm not going to say much more than that. For those of you who've been watching the show for a long time, you might have an idea. I've been trying to get this to happen on the show. Okay, I'll just say it. Because for all I know, Chuck might be watching. For those of you who used to watch Channel 10 back in the day when Chuck Huebner was still anchoring, he used to do a reading of A Visit from St. Nick every year. It was, I guess it was Channel 10's version of what WWL does in New Orleans, where Phil Johnson, may he rest his soul, would read the Gift of the Magi, or recite the Gift of the Magi, every year. And WWL, still to this day, because Phil died, I guess, about 4 or 5 years ago, to this day, WWL still plays a tape of Phil Johnson reading the Gift of the Magi. Of course, Chuck left Channel 3 2 or so years ago, but Channel 10 doesn't run Chuck's reading of A Visit from St. Nick. So what I would like to do is get Chuck in here live next week and have him read A Visit from St. Nick. I'm going to have to call him. Chuck, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is a brand new father, so it may be difficult getting him in here. But we will try our best to get Chuck in here next week to do a reading of A Visit from St. Nick. And if that happens, he, of course, would be live in studio, while Santa will be live via satellite from the North Pole. But we want to bring that Christmas tradition back, so I will do my best to make it happen. No guarantees, but Chuck, if you're out there watching, we want you on the show next week. And, of course, I'll give him a call before the end of the week. New Orleans Saints game, before we get into the serious stuff, still going on right now. The Saints are down by 5 with 6.5 to go in that contest. It's 16-11. The Saints have not scored a touchdown yet today. They reached the end zone, or so we thought they reached the end zone, earlier in the fourth quarter, but the pass was later ruled incomplete. The receiver on the play, I forget who it was, dropped the ball. The official at first didn't see it, but the replay convincingly, or was pretty convincing and showed otherwise. The Saints right now are pinned at their own 1-yard line. They're just trying to get the ball downfield, and they're trying to get points on the board. And again, the Saints down by 5. It's a one-score game. They score a touchdown. They take the lead. Assuming the extra point doesn't get blocked, they'll be okay. But the Saints right now, again, with about 6 minutes left in their contest, we can't show you the video, obviously, because it would violate NFL rules. But we can tell you that Tampa is up 16-11. So if you see my eyes shift every once in a while, it's because the Saints game is on. I have it on in the background here in the studio. Saints on 3rd down. Breeze rolling, and he's going to throw the ball away in the end zone. They say it's no intentional grounding. They say the ball was tipped, which, lucky break there for the Saints, because otherwise it would have been a safety in the end zone. Let's see that one more time. Let's see that play. Scrambling. Oh, yeah. He threw it into a defender who swatted it down. 366-8951 is the phone number for those of you who do want to get in tonight. We'll talk a little bit about the Saints game later on as we get closer to the final score. The Saints are punting it away right now from their own end zone, which, again, the Saints needing a win tonight to have a chance of finishing the season above 500. If the Saints lose, the best they can do is 8-8. Saints lose, they're also all but out of the playoff hunt. Right now, Atlanta and Tampa Bay are at least entering today. I have not seen what Atlanta's done score-wise today. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and pull up the handy-dandy mobile device, and let's take a look at what Atlanta's done. Because Atlanta, again, coming into today, was 7-5. They had the tiebreaker over Tampa in the NFC South. Both teams 2 games ahead of New Orleans, who stood at 5-7. Taking a look, well, I don't want college football. Here we go. we talked about the Saints. Atlanta absolutely drumming the Los Angeles Rams 42-7. So if Tampa holds, and looks like Atlanta's going to win this one easily, barring a miracle from the Rams, the Tampa and Atlanta, again, should their results hold, will advance to 8-5 on the season. The Saints will fall to 5-8, will be 3 games behind those two teams. Carolina beat San Diego today to improve to 5-8. So with the Saints' loss, Carolina, if I'm not mistaken, would move ahead of the Saints in the standings via the tiebreak, and as a result, the Saints would be in dead last in the NFC South. So this game with major implications for the Saints. A loss here, again, takes them out of contention for a winning season, will all but eliminate them from the playoff hunt, and again, would put them in last place in the division. We've talked about it on the show before, or at least I think I've mentioned it over the last few weeks. But the way the Saints have regressed over the last few years, going 7-9, 7-9, and now this year, possibly finishing even worse than that. It's time for new management in the Saints front office. It's time for Mickey Loomis to go. I can argue that it's time for Sean Payton to go. That it's time for the majority of the coaching staff to give up the ghost and say, so long. Will it be bittersweet? Absolutely, because this current staff has brought the Saints lots of success. Of course, Super Bowl 44. But the fact of the matter is, it's been 7 years since the Saints won a Super Bowl. It's been 5 years now, 5 seasons now, since the New Orleans Saints have made a significant run in the playoffs. It's been 4 years since the Saints' last winning season. Check that, it's been 3 years, 2013. It's time for a change. 3 straight losing seasons. It's time. It's been real, it's been good, but Tom Benson needs to make a change. And the same can be said for the New Orleans Pelicans basketball organization. Dell Demps needs to go. Alvin Gentry needs to go. You've got Anthony Davis on this team, and Drew Brees just threw another interception. Or no, let's see. Check that. That was not a Brees interception. Tampa's actually on offense. The Pelicans organization needs to get rid of Dell Demps. He's had his chances. Alvin Gentry, now I realize he's had to battle injuries, he's had to battle a lack of talent, but that's no excuse. The Pelicans need a coach who can build on Anthony Davis's strengths. The Pelicans need a coach who can work with the talent they have right now. The Pels need a general manager and or a head coach who can identify talent, can draft the right players, and make trades for the pieces that need to be put around Anthony Davis to make Davis and the team successful. Davis has been carrying this team on his back for the last 2 years. But one player cannot make a team. Tom Benson needs to do some soul searching and needs to make the right moves to make his 2 teams successful again. Just 2 years ago, Benson fired a head coach who led the Pelicans to the playoffs after breaking even and got swept by the Golden State Warriors in the opening round. He gave Monty Williams an ultimatum, make the playoffs or get fired. He did, and he still got fired. Alvin Gentry has had 2 years to get this Pelicans team where it needs to be. Dell Demps has had, when did the Pels hire him? Because he was there when they were still the Hornets. At least 6 years now that he's been involved in that organization. And still, nothing has changed. Nothing. The Pelicans are no more successful than they were Wendell Dimps took over the organization shortly after Tom Benson purchased it. It's time for some shakeups in New Orleans. And I know there are a lot of fans who will say, no, we can't get rid of Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis. They won us a world championship, but what have they done for us lately? Again, I'll be there in Canton and cheering them on when they're inducted into the Hall of Fame. But right now, it's time for the Saints to turn over a new leaf and start looking towards the future. 366-8951, extension 2 is the phone number. Election cycle, it's over. The elections are over. Thank sweet baby Jesus. No more debates. No more commercials. No more bickering and arguing about which candidates are better. Thank Jesus. The last two election cycles, the gubernatorial cycle and this congressional cycle, have proven, if nothing else, that old school Louisiana politics still exists. That no matter how much Louisiana voters talk about wanting clean races and wanting politics done right, whatever that means, that they still love the spectacle. That is, or they still love the spectacle composed of the mudslinging and the name-calling and the colorful commercials and the colorful characters that make up Louisiana politics. And I know that some of you out there voted for Clay Higgins and John Kennedy because of, well, you voted for John Kennedy because he was a Republican. He was running against a Democrat. Many of you voted for Clay Higgins for Congress over Scott Angel because of the so-called draining of the swamp. You wanted to put somebody in who wasn't a traditional politician. But I make the argument that Clay Higgins is the traditional Louisiana politician in the respect that he went around and that he used his love of God, again, take that for what it's worth. He used his celebrity status as a law enforcement officer and used his stumping to win this election. Clay Higgins has done what no politician in recent memory has been able to do. Now, granted that Clay did have PAC money come in his favor, but the fact that Clay Higgins got into the runoff solely on his name recognition, solely on the fact of his reputation as the tough talking cop and Crime Stoppers, and on the fact that he went out, shook hands, kissed babies, and stumped. Say what you will about the man, but he was a man of the people during the election. He took the Edwin Edwards, John McKithen, Uncle Earl, old school method of politicking. And that was going the grassroots route. He didn't have much money in the bank during this election. In fact, he was one of the lowest bankrolled candidates in this election the entire way through. And he still managed to win and beat the well-oiled Scott Angel machine. That by itself is amazing and deserves recognition. But I fear that today that Clay Higgins woke up at his home in Port Barre, which by the way is outside the district. Again, I said it before, I'll say it again, he does not live in the district. There's no law preventing him from running in a district outside of the one in which he lives. People asked that question after the debate that ran this Thursday night on KATC. Amazingly, there is no law preventing someone from running in a district in which they don't live. But I digress. Higgins woke up this morning and had to start asking himself, what now? Clay is not a traditional politician. He'll be the first to tell you that. And I believe Clay when he said that if you'd have asked him several years ago if he ever would have run for Washington, that he'd have laughed at you. I kind of also believe Higgins when he says he would rather be caught in live fire than run for office. Because there was a lot of damning information that came out about him and a lot of unflattering information that came out about him. He survived it. He survived the election cycle. That says a lot about him. But again, Clay Higgins now has to ask himself, what do I do when I get to Washington? He doesn't have political experience. And the fact of the matter is, no matter how much people say they want to drain the swamp, they don't want a politician in Washington. Well, the fact of the matter is, politicians run Washington. Politicians run the world. They run the United States. And the fact of the matter is, he's going to have to politic. He's going to have to be what Mel Brooks called a stand-up philosopher to bring money to the state of Louisiana, to bring programs to the state of Louisiana. He has to politic to be an ambassador, not only for the 3rd Congressional District, but for the state of Louisiana. Scott Angel, at the very least, had that leg up. Scott knows how to play the game. Clay's going to have to learn the game, and he's going to have to learn it quickly. I wish Clay well. But again, Clay's going to have to hold his nose and do a lot of things that he doesn't like. Or he's going to have to do what he did with the sheriff's office and resign because he doesn't want to violate his own moral code. The fact of the matter is, Washington, D.C. and politics aren't for the faint of heart. They aren't for those who, dare I say, have rigid belief systems like I believe Clay Higgins does. We'll find out over the course of the next 2 years whether or not Clay Higgins can prove himself to be a worthy representative. I think he can handle the job. I think Clay can do it. After all, he was a sheriff's deputy. He was a police officer. The man has to have some kind of negotiation skills to be able to do those jobs, especially since he worked on a SWAT team. The fact of the matter is, though, Clay Higgins is going into an uncharted territory. And Clay is going to have to be the one to step up and do what Charles Bustani's been able to do successfully for the last 12 years, to do what David Vitter has been able to do successfully for the last 12 years, and what Mary Landrieu and John Breaux and Chris John and Edwin Edwards were able to do prior to them. Because keep in mind, Edwin was elected governor after serving 4 years in Congress. Clay is going to have to be the person who brings the hog back to Louisiana. He's going to have to be the man who brings the pork to this state, to this region, who's going to have to fight for funding after a future hurricane, after a future flood. He's going to have to be the man who steps up and scratches somebody else's back when he needs his scratched. Again, Washington will be an eye-opening experience for him. He's got a lot to learn. He's got to learn it quick, or learn it quickly if we're going to be grammatically correct. I've got faith that Clay can do it. I just hope that he stays true to his word and that he doesn't turn into the so-called average politician, or at least that stereotypical image that we have of a politician. Now, on the flip side of this, Scott Angel is going to go back to being a public service commissioner. Is his political career done? Absolutely not. This will not be the last we hear of Scott Angel. I think Scott got hurt more so by the fact that he didn't endorse David Vitter in the last election. I think that's part of the reason why we saw some of the PACs come out in favor of Clay Higgins. Keep in mind, folks, David Vitter, even though he's leaving the Senate and is transitioning into private life, David Vitter very much is still the Republican kingmaker here in the state of Louisiana. Let us not forget that. David Vitter, I almost guarantee, had a hand in getting Clay Higgins elected. Whether it was in directing PAC money to him or otherwise, the memory of David Vitter not getting Angel's endorsement in the runoff, allowing JBE to win, I think helped, or I think resulted in Angel's demise. Again, when you've got a staunchly partisan group of voters, especially those who turned out this weekend, only 28% or 27% of voters turned out across the state of Louisiana. But when you have a highly partisan group of voters coming in and determining the election, this was bound to happen. They remembered what happened last November. They remembered that Scott Angel did not endorse his fellow Republican, and they came back and reminded, and it came back to bite him, for better or for worse. It's terrible that that's what sprung the election in some people's minds, but that's what it boiled down to. But Scott Angel's career is not finished. I think he's got another run for governor in him. If nothing else, he has another run for Congress left in him. Keep in mind, a House seat comes up in 2 years. We've got 1 year off in the traditional Louisiana election cycle. There will be some special elections next year. Of course, John Kennedy going to the Senate. We will have a special election at some point next year, probably in March and April, for the state treasurer's job. Otherwise, barring any kind of resignations or God forbid, untimely deaths, we won't have many major elections next year. But in 2 years, we've got congressional midterms. And I bet you dollars to donuts, Scott Angel is going to pop up again. And he's going to run. And he's going to use what Clay Higgins has done in those 2 years, or hasn't done in his 1.5 to 2 years in Congress, against Higgins in that election. There are already people who are on Facebook joking that they're going to run for Senate, or that they're going to run for Congress as well, since Higgins won. They figured, hey, if he can win, so can I. I'm not going to hold them to that. But I would be surprised if Scott Angel does not run again in 2 years. I would also be surprised if Scott Angel doesn't run for governor in 3 years. His career by no means is finished. None. Scott Angel is a savvy politician. He's dedicated his life to public service. And I guarantee you, he's plotting his next move. Whether he'll run for Public Service Commission in 2 years, whether he'll run for Congress in 2 years, whether he'll run for governor in 3. He's plotting his next move. You have not heard the last of him. You've not heard the last of Scott Angel yet. Believe you me, you have not heard the last of Scott Angel. 366-8951 is the phone number, extension 2, for those of you who are watching. And I wonder how much the debate, the Thursday night debate, had on the election. Because again, you have, if you look at the congressional race, it perfectly mirrored the presidential race in the respect that someone tried dialing in and then hung up. Hopefully they'll check back in. Somebody, I lost my train of thought. The debate and this election mirrored the presidential race perfectly, in the respect that Angel came to the debate prepared, albeit overly rehearsed, and I think that hurt him. Scott, for the most part, read his opening and closing statements, was rehearsed, had everything down pat. Clay came in unprepared. It was obvious that he was dodging the questions and dodging the answers. And I say this as an independent observer. He tried spinning away and use his personality to answer the questions without actually saying anything. And again, that part scares me, is that he wasn't familiar with the issues that were presented. He didn't give answers that for me anyway, were satisfactory. So again, he's got a long way to go and a lot to learn before getting to Washington next month. Caller, go ahead.
Oh yeah, Scott Angel's finished. I said it 6 months ago. He finished.
You said it last year when he lost. He was finished.
Serious. Because let me tell you something. Anytime you cannot get the support of the Republican Party in your own parish, you finish. And you make it a great point there. Angel early on in the night last night. Let me interrupt you. Then I'm gonna let you talk. And the reason he finished, because you cannot be a Republican and support somebody like somebody else for governor, a Democrat. I'm gonna say it again. He lost to a guy that
and again, I said that it was a revenge vote because he didn't back David Vitter. And you know what? I wouldn't have backed David Vitter either with some of the crap that he came out and said. At least Scott Angel has a conscience. But with that said, you're absolutely right. I was amazed when I looked at the numbers this morning. Scott Angel won St. Martin Parish by only a couple hundred votes. At one point last night, Higgins was winning, and I don't know how early on it was, but Higgins was winning St. Martin Parish until late in the night. The only parish that Angel won handily was Calcasieu. He won that 60-40. Everywhere else, Higgins carried. Again, and it goes back to what you said, Lynn. It goes back to the fact that people remembered last year's gubernatorial election when Angel took his ball, went home, and didn't endorse Vitter. And again, that PAC money that came in, I bet you anything that was tied to Vitter, because again, even though he's leaving the U.S. Senate, he's still the Republican kingmaker in the state. Don't think that whoever's the chairman of the state party is, or Roger Villery is not the kingmaker. It's not Villery, it's not Nungesser, it's David Vitter. He's the one calling the shots in the state. And until he decides it's his time to give up the ghost, he will continue to be the Republican kingmaker in Louisiana.
Because like I said, he got beat by a guy that just decided to get into politics for the first time.
Well, Clay Higgins decided to run because... Well, Clay Higgins decided to run, and I say, this is my take on it. He decided to run because he saw trends in politics. He saw Trump running. He saw himself as a principled man. I think he started believing his own. His own press, and he realized that he was getting national notoriety. Cajun John Wayne, Crime Stoppers guy. If I run for Congress, people will vote for me just based on who I am and my name recognition. The sad part about it is that strategy worked. He didn't say anything during the election about a platform. He said nothing about what his beliefs were, other than God's and gun, God's guns and Captain Higgins. That was his platform. But he won, which leads to my question. Donald Trump didn't have much of a platform. Higgins didn't have much of a platform. What is it now with voters where they're willing to vote for someone who doesn't have a clear platform, who doesn't have a clear mission, but they're willing to take a chance on those people despite the fact that they have no experience and really are saying piss off to the system?
And one pretty easy, 56 to 44.
Right, but that's my thing. I'm asking.
About 12%. Wow.
Yeah, that's true. Earlier in the night it was larger. I thought he had it by more, but you're right. It was 56-44. But my question is, what is it with the American public today, or at least with the average American voter, where they're willing to take a chance on a celebrity, or willing to take a chance on someone who's never worked in the government sphere and put them in the highest offices of the country? You look at Trump, you look at Higgins, you look at, those are the two best examples that I can give. But people talk about wanting to drain the swamp. What if this comes back to backfire? What if Higgins isn't an effective congressman for the district? What if Trump isn't the best president? You give him a chance, and then what? Do you keep him in because you voted for him the first time? Or do you drain the swamp again and give it to somebody else who's inexperienced? It's a catch-22 right now for the American voter. I'm still trying to figure out the train of thought here.
Yeah.
I
don't know. A lot of people just want something different, I guess.
They want something. I get they want something different, but do you give up? Do you give up the security in knowing that? And I'm talking from a congressional standpoint here, because this was the case with Charles Boustany and, to an extent, John Fleming in the Senate race. Do you send someone to Congress who's never been there and doesn't know how to work the system and get money for the state? Or do you send someone who's been there, Do you send the typical politician to Washington because they know what to do? Do you send them to bring the money in, or do you send someone because you want to drain the swamp? It seems like, especially in the Senate race, Louisiana voted against its interests. I know John Kennedy has wanted to be the U.S. Senator for a long time. It's been his life goal. But look, going back to the primary, you had a lot of better options than Kennedy.
Because, of course, you got to look at it this way too, though. He's talking about, people that's been there and experienced. Well, before they got elected the first time, they hadn't been there. So,
hey, Lynn, hold the line for a second. Hold the line, Lynn. Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, you keep saying that the risking to security of a polished and a knowledgeable politician. Let me ask you something. In this parish alone, almost 10,000 people in this area have lost their jobs.
Right.
On the average, health insurance is rising anywhere from 15 to 20%. Number of people have lost their homes. Now, in that reference, what have the residents of this area lost? They've lost a lot already. With career politicians like Bustani and others who have also lost in this race, and there's a reason for that. Look, most of it, and I can tell you, I'm a firm believer in term. I mean, yes, you have guys that can go and have experience, and eventually they'll get on committees, they'll get on appropriation committees, they'll get money back to Louisiana. But in actuality, when it comes down to it, it's the economy, it's the food on the table, it's the meal ticket. And look, and I understand, I voted for Higgins, and I'll tell you why. Yeah, I knew that he wasn't probably going to be on any committees. I knew that he was going in totally green. But when you look at Scott Ongel's career, and you say public service, I say career politician.
Okay.
Use two different terms. Okay. So that's the way many people are viewing politicians now, and that's what you see going on. What do we have to lose?
Which
maybe
leads
the state loses something. Maybe the state loses money, appropriations, highway money, those types of things. But in the long run, what have people in this area who have seen all these things happen and lost jobs, see their houses and their homes be through the floods, see their health insurance go up anywhere from 15 to 20%. What have they lost? They've lost nothing. And so, when you see, and it's not just Bustani, Fleming, now him, you look at the trend. The only one who got in office is Kennedy, that was a career politician. That's it. When you look at the trend, Newcomer Johnson in another seat in District 4. So you look at the trend and what's going on. It's not just the Trump trend. It's where people say, what have I got to lose at this point? Yeah, you may be right in terms of money coming back to Louisiana, but when I see people, don't have jobs and are hurting right now, and they look at what they have to gamble at this point, career politicians haven't got the job done or putting jobs and food on the table. So this is where they're at. And look, whatever happens 2 years from now, as you said, if someone else runs for Clay Higgins' seat, that's fine. I'd be willing to vote against him if he doesn't do well. But you know what? We knew, and I knew what I was voting for when I voted for him.
Right. And that's the thing. And that's the other side of it. With the economy, with the oil industry, what do you have to lose? A lot of people have lost, which goes back to something else. And this comes back to the state side as well as to the national end. Here in the local government and state government, we've failed to diversify our economy. We're still heavily invested in the oil industry, for better or for worse. 30 years ago, when the oil industry crashed and people lost their jobs and the economy went south, the same people who were in office then got reelected. John Breaux got sent to the Senate. Who was our congressman at the time? Who replaced John Breaux in the 7th Congressional District at the time? I forget who it was. But Jimmy Hayes, I believe it was, got elected at that point. He stayed in office for another 10 years before he retired. You look at Edwin Edwards, who was in office at that time. He got brought back in 1992. State legislators stuck around for a little bit. It's a cyclical problem here in Louisiana with regards to the oil industry and with regards to our economy here. We've had the same leaders in this state for the better part of the last 30 years with a little bit of turnover, but they still didn't learn their lesson and still didn't diversify the economy. So that goes down. That comes back to both federal and local leaders. So it's a catch-22. Yes, we get burned by the oil economy, but again, the career politicians fail to diversify. It's no matter how you slice and dice it, we all get screwed in the end.
Well, there's no doubt. And when you talk of diversity, I don't think Lafayette Parish in this area gets enough credit for the diversity that has turned about. Look, the medical industry has grown tremendously here. The biotech, the tech industries, all have moved into this area. Remember, the whole idea of the city of Lafayette, the parish government of Lafayette getting involved in Wi-Fi, was to bring in business.
Right.
They have. It just hasn't been enough to overcome 50 years, 75 years, as you say, of the oil industry in this area. And so it's going to take a while. But that being said, I'll say it again. It all comes down to the economy and the meal ticket and the bread and butter issues. It always does in most elections. And again, I know Gustani's a decent guy. I've met him personally, been to his congressional office in Washington. But you know what? He's been in there for years. And look, he's had opportunities. But go look at his voting record, and you'll see some things where people say, hey, wait a minute. Why are you giving away, the powers, your powers as a Congress, fast-track trade authority? Why would you give that away? That's one of the powers that Congress is supposed to possess over the president's office.
Right.
But you scratch your head, and they did a lot. He's done a number of things. And but again, to me, with talking to people here, I think people, as you said, well, what are they looking at? Hey, he's basically a blank check. He really doesn't know the issues. Really has lack of knowledge of the way government works.
Yeah.
And that probably is going to hurt him. I don't see him being on a number of committees and getting a number of opportunities like that.
Well, that's something he mentioned last night. Is he wants to start working on committee assignments. He's hoping to get a slot on the Armed Forces Committee. As a rookie congressman, I don't know if he's going to. I think he's setting his sights a little bit too high. But hey, who knows? He might surprise us.
He might. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. What's your name, sir?
My name's Brian.
Say that again.
My name is Brian.
Brian, thank you for calling. It's a great call. Appreciate the point of view.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. Brian brings up some great points there. It's and you're right. People are going to vote on bread and butter issues, which he's absolutely right. With the economy, with the oil economy, with the Lord, I just lost my train of thought again. With the oil economy, with health insurance premiums, with a variety of other issues affecting local voters here, they're going to try to give someone a shot when they feel that they've been neglected in the past by so-called career politicians. Again, I don't dispute that, and I can't fault them for that, because that is a very real reason and a very valid point. But again, my fear is I didn't hear much of anything from the person who won the election during the race. At least with John Kennedy and Foster Campbell, at least in their race, at least with Kennedy, we heard platforms. We heard what he's running on. Same thing with Foster Campbell. Seems like with every other candidate in the race for the 3rd Congressional District before in the primary, we heard their platforms. We heard what they were saying, with the exception of one, and that's the one who's going over to Congress now. Lynn, are you still there? Let's come back to that. Lynn, you there?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Quick comment, then I'll hang up and let more people get in.
Okay.
The Democrats in Congress and the liberal media, they're still in total meltdown, because Donald Trump winning. And they have criticized almost everybody he has appointed. I mean, myself, so far the people he's appointed in the cabinet, some of them I think are really supportive. Some of them, and for one of them,
the only person he's nominated so far who's remotely qualified for his job is General Mattis. That's the best pick you could get for Secretary of Defense. Everybody else he's nominated, I've scratched my head. It's like, what in the hell is he doing? Mattis, though, that was a brilliant pick.
If he picked that CEO from Exxon for Secretary of State, I'm totally against that.
Yeah, the one nomination he made that made me laugh, outright laugh, was his pick for the Small Business Administration, Linda McMahon.
Yeah.
He named the former CEO of the World Wrestling Federation, or now World Wrestling Entertainment, the wrestling company, the national wrestling company that killed mom and pop territorial wrestling, to run the Small Business Administration. Really?
I know.
So, but yeah, that the irony of that hit me as soon as I heard the announcement. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. It'll be interesting to see also what comes of the calls from Lindsey Graham and John McCain and others in the Senate, from Republicans in the Senate, who want an investigation into Russia's alleged meddling into the election. So it'll be an interesting.
We just have to wait and see. I mean,
right? It's
every time Trump, Bush. I feel on this case 8 years, and I voted for him twice, but
right.
You see, the difference is a lot of Democrats, but from what I see, most of the Democrats, they stick behind that person no matter what the hell they say or what the hell they do.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Republicans have a tendency of doing the same thing. More recently, though, they've kind of backed away from that policy.
Some of them do, but all I'm saying is, put it this way, there are more Republicans, criticized Republicans than Democrats.
Yeah.
One more comment that I'm going to
mm-hmm.
Back in 2009, after Obama took office, Obama said, elections have consequences, and we won.
Right. And it's the same.
And the Republicans are welcome to come along for the ride, but they're going to have to get behind them in the back. So my thing, I'm saying this to Democrats and liberals or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Trump won. Get over it.
Right.
Elections have consequences. The man got the right to pick who he wants, okay?
Right.
Obama got everybody he picked. So give the man a chance. If the Democrats want to come along, that's fine, but make them get in the back.
And I agree with that statement. Elections have consequences, and to steal a phrase, you get the government you deserve.
Right.
That's what's going to happen here. Elections have consequences. The people you vote in, well, you have to live with the decisions they make. It happens, regardless of Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever the case is. The election was made. The vote happened. It is what it is. My only hang-up is, and the one thing about this election that pisses me off, not so much about the primary, because the primary was fantastic in this regard, but last night's election, the one thing that disappoints me is that people complain about the election, but they didn't vote. The voter turnout last night in the state of Louisiana was 28%. No, check that. It was 27. I predicted 28. And Shedler predicted 32, I think. But the actual voter turnout was 27%. 27%. Just more than a quarter of registered voters in Louisiana determine who's going to the Senate, who's going to the House. That angers me. The fact that there are people in this state who didn't give a damn about who represented them in Congress. That's a problem. Apathy is a problem. I can live with the results of the election. I can live with that because this is America. We live in a democratic republic. The will of the people is the will of the people. Clay Higgins is my congressman. John Kennedy is my senator. Donald Trump is my president. I may not have voted for them. I may have voted for them. But regardless of who I voted for, whatever the outcome is, I accept. What I do not accept is the apathy of American voters, of Louisiana voters, and the fact that just over 25% went to vote in an election that can have national implications. Good job, Louisiana. You royally screwed this one up. Again, it's not about who won the election, because again, I can accept the results. John Kennedy, I think, for his folksiness and how absolutely annoying his commercials were, I think John Kennedy's going to do a good job in the Senate. He's been preparing for this job forever. I hope he does a good job. But in all seriousness, I think John Kennedy's going to do a good job. I think Clay Higgins has the aptitude to learn. how things worked in the House, that he can't be a renegade there like he wants to be. And I think ultimately Higgins is going to do a good job. But Louisiana voters got to get their act together and they've got to go and vote.
Like I said, I enjoyed it as usual talking to you, man.
Pleasure's all mine, Lynn. Hey, baseball season's starting in a couple months. You signed up to umpire yet?
I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I don't know.
I see Travis and a bunch of other guys are posting rule interpretations and situations online every day. So I think about you. I'm like, I wonder if Lynn would sign up.
What, you got a question about a player or something?
No. Travis has been putting rule interpretations and situations on Facebook every day. So every day I see him, and I partake and I answer. But I always wonder. I'm like, I wonder if Lynn would sign up yet, because I'm doing softball again this year. So.
You got my number on the call ID, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah.
Tell me when you get a chance or whatever.
Sounds good. I'll give you a shout.
Okay, thank you, man.
Later, brother.
Bye-bye.
Lynn tried calling in. We've got 3 missed calls on here.
Call is no longer available.
Oh, don't tell me call's no longer available. I saw the number trying to call in. I think it was Mary. If it was you, Mary, go ahead, call back. We've got 5 minutes left in the show. But again, with what Lynn was saying and with what Brian was saying before, again, I understand and I completely get why Higgins won. I completely get why Trump won. I get why Kennedy won. I understand why the votes turned out the way they did, because people are pissed off. But the fact of the matter is, last night, 27% turnout, Louisiana, we got to do better than that. Caller, go ahead. Caller.
Yes.
Go ahead, it's you.
Hey, how you doing today?
I'm good, how are you?
All right, yeah, I was just catching your program. I just was running across and then, is this something like a new show you're going to be on every week?
No, we've been on for 8.5 years now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, oh, and I just realized, hold on, wait a second. That's why I brought the owl with me and I completely forgot to put him on the desk. We have to make sure the owl gets seen at least once a show. Yeah, we've been on AOC now for 8.5 years. We started on Mondays and moved to Saturdays and moved to Mondays and moved to Tuesdays. Then we landed on Sunday nights not too long ago. We're here every Sunday night from 6 to 7.
Oh, okay, every Monday, so you're going to be on every Monday at 6 to 7?
No, every Sunday, every Sunday.
I'm sorry, every Sunday.
Yeah, we're here every Sunday from 6 to 7. This is our second to last show of 2016. We're on next week, but next week Santa Claus is taking this spot. It'll be our annual Santa Claus show. Santa will be here taking gift requests from kids. So I will be back in here on January the 8th. That's the next time you'll see me.
Okay, what is your name?
My name's Ian Ozan.
Oh, Ian, how you doing?
I'm doing good. You are, sir?
My name is Dennis.
Hey, Dennis, thank you for watching. We appreciate you flipping through.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure, man. It's just, it's nice to see someone out here, representing that has a cause for action, in our politics and all of that. I was just wondering, I was one, and I apologize for not getting out and vote, but I usually go and vote every time.
Uh-huh.
I just happened to miss it yesterday, and it's a shame there was just only that one day,
Yeah, but keep in mind, you've got early voting too, a whole week of early voting before, so that's the other thing. And early voting turnout was only 8%, I believe.
Oh, wow.
So this election just kind of, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who are bummed out and just burnt out from the previous election. Hold on just a second. Hey, Mary, hold on a second. But go ahead, Dennis. But yeah, I don't know if people were just burned out with the November election or what, but this one just flew under the radar.
Are these the only two that was on the ballot? Was the Republican and Democrat? We didn't have no independent, no Green.
Correct, because in November with the jungle primary system, everybody was on the ballot. Top 2 vote getters moved to the runoff.
Okay, that's what it was. It was a runoff.
Right. And there are some tax propositions across Acadiana too, depending on where you lived. So, but Dennis, I got to run. We've got less than a minute to go.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, what about in St. Martin tax? They had some tax propositions also?
They did. There was one parish-wide and 2 locals. I don't remember how they turned out, though. The Secretary of State's website would have that. KTC.com also has it, I believe.
Okay, I sure appreciate it, but I do look forward maybe to speaking with you on some different issues that need to be raised.
Yep.
And if you'd be interested, I'd love to speak to you about it.
Sounds good. I'll be back here. Like I said, the next regular edition of the show is January 8th, so we'll talk to you then.
Okay, Ian. Thanks a lot for taking my call, yeah?
Thanks, Dennis. Appreciate it.
Happy holidays to you and your family.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye. Hey, Mary, I'm sorry about that. Go ahead. You got the last word.
Okay, you were asking about who replaced John Breaux?
Right.
Jimmy Hayes.
I thought that was it, but I appreciate you confirming that for me. Thanks, Mary.